Welcome to the Miller Lite Q&A podcast here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. I'm Dale Lolley, here to talk a little. We're going to do a little Steelers football, since that's my expertise, or so they say anyways. But I did a Q&A on the other day, and I had some questions in there, and I just wanted to expand on some of the questions that were in there. It's a little tough to do that if you're kind of limited by how much you can answer some of these questions on our live Qs. My first question today is from Saxon. And Saxon asked the question, and this is a good one. Dale, do you have anyone in mind this year that could have a breakout year, much like Mike Hilton last year? I had one guy in mind, and then he got hurt on Wednesday, and that was Jake McGee, the tight end from Florida, who suffered an Achilles tendon injury. At least that's what we've been reported, that it's an Achilles tendon tear. The team just obviously doesn't have to report any injuries that happen in the offseason, but that news will come out as we move on through this stuff. And McGee was a guy that I really thought he joined the Steelers late last year in training camp, a couple weeks into camp, and it was just before their first game, and came out and flashed as a blocker in the preseason games and earned himself a spot on the practice squad. And then on the practice squad seemingly every week last year, he would go up and make a catch over somebody or get open over the middle, and really gave the defense fits all year long, to the point where they had the defense had a special dance that they did when somebody got McGee'd. They would do a little dance and kind of make fun of the guy who got beat by Jake McGee again, and it happened time and time again because he had a nice impact for them last year. And I really thought he was going to push for a roster spot this year. Obviously, that isn't going to happen now if he is out for the year. Another guy to keep an eye on. I know this is somebody who's a free agent signing, so he's not completely under the radar. But I think people are going to be surprised by John Bostic. I've seen a lot of people say, well, he's injury prone. He's kind of bounced around, and it makes people wonder about his abilities. I'll say this about John Bostic: he's been traded for twice in the NFL, and that doesn't happen. This is a league where most guys don't get traded once. For two teams to go out and make an effort to get him, to acquire him. And then, of course, he's never been out of work very long when he hit the free agent market. Signed by Indianapolis last year, the Steelers scooped him up this year. I think people are going to be very surprised at how well this guy moves in space. He's not a bad football player. Is he Ryan Shazier? No, he's not Ryan Shazier, but I think Bostic could be a surprise this year for them. And then you can kind of keep an eye on the outside linebackers. There's some spots open there. Farrington Huguenin is a guy who flashed a little bit in the preseason last year. And Keon Adams is another guy, a 7th-round draft pick, coming back from an injury, a shoulder injury. I wrote about him on the site for Thursday. He's a guy to keep an eye on as the Steelers go into the preseason this year and see what he does there, because they've, with only Anthony Chickillo back as the backup at outside linebacker, there's some spots open there, and so we'll see what happens with those two guys, how that shakes out in the battle between Keon Adams and Farrington Huguenin. Other than that, I mean, you're not going to see a lot of surprises on this team. Pretty much everybody is back offensively. You get rid of a Martavis Bryant. I think that Vance McDonald is going to take a big step forward this year, and I think he could be somewhat surprising to people. But he's a former 2nd-round draft pick, much like John Bostic. I don't know that that's going to necessarily be a huge surprise for anybody. Not coming out of nowhere like Mike Hilton did last year, where nobody was really expecting much from him going into the rookie minicamp and OTAs, and all he did was go out there and make plays day after day after day and forced his way onto the roster. That was really a unique story, and it just doesn't happen like that every year. But I appreciate the question on that, Saxon. That was a very good question, and I wanted to answer that one a little more expansively than I did on my live Qs. We're going to be back here in a minute with the Miller Lite Q&A session, and we'll answer another question that has to do with the Steelers when we return.
Miller Lite is the original light beer, and we'll always brew it to have more taste, with only 96 calories and 3.2 carbs. Because we believe that if you compromise on taste, you can taste the compromise. Miller Lite, hold true.
Great beer, great responsibility. 2018 Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Average analysis, 12 fluid ounces. Less than 1 gram protein, 0 grams fat.
If you're one of the thousands of Western Pennsylvanians who love to get outdoors, then you need to check out this cool new website, stepoutside.org. Learn where, when, and how you can go camping, hiking, or hunting, or take part in power sports, shooting sports, or water sports in your local community or across the country at stepoutside.org, where everything you need to know is just a click away. That's stepoutside.org.
What I want from my public accounting firm is big ideas.
But I don't want to lose the personal attention.
My company needs global capabilities.
From a firm with local ownership.
And I want to work with industry experts.
Who take the time to understand my unique challenges. And that's what sets Schneider Downs apart. Expertise for the most complex business issues. With the service you need every day. To learn how our big thinking with a personal focus can help your company, visit schneiderdowns.com.
Injured in an accident? Need assistance in preserving your business's interests? Let the attorneys at Bassey, Vreeland & Associates protect your legal rights. For over 65 years, Bassey, Vreeland & Associates has been representing the citizens and businesses of southwestern Pennsylvania. With offices strategically located in Washington and Charleroi, Bassey, Vreeland & Associates can deliver results for you throughout the Pittsburgh area. Visit www.bmvlaw.com or call 724-228-7000 to see how Bassey, Vreeland & Associates can meet your legal needs. Bassey, Vreeland & Associates. We fight, we care, we win.
And we're back with the Miller Lite Q&A podcast here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. I'm Dale Lolley, here joined now by Chris Carter. We got our Steelers team together again.
What up, Dale?
Oh, not much. Chris, I had some live cues today, and I had a lot of stuff on here that far-reaching stuff, not just questions about the OTAs and those kind of things. And I'm going to answer another question here that I got. This one's from Josh M. 623, and Josh asks, how is the new rule for lowering the helmet affecting the way Steelers coaches are teaching tackling and blocking at OTAs, and how do you think the league can officiate this rule? Well, that's going to be the big question in terms of how the league is going to officiate it. In reality, the Steelers don't do any live tackling at OTAs. They don't do any live tackling really until they get into the training camp, and even then, it's not a lot of it. They have a couple of sessions where they do live tackling. Now, you can work on a little bit on technique and those kind of things, but by and large, by the time these guys get to the NFL, they've been tackling the way that they tackle since they were 8, 9, 10 years old. You are what you are by that point. Mm-hmm. The issue with tackling, to me, starts and learning how to tackle is much like trying to shoot a basketball. You learn how to do these things early on. Mm-hmm. You can tweak things a little bit, but you're not going to completely remake how you teach somebody how to tackle.
Yeah, I mean, part of the thing is also I don't think the Steelers have to change much because they're taught to keep their heads up. They're taught, and like you said, there's some players that don't, and unfortunately, you get situations where like Ryan Shazier, his head was down, and that's what happens, and that's why my high school coach Willie McClendon always told me if I ever see you with your head down, I'm taking you out of the game because I never want to coach a vegetable, and that's one of the biggest risks. And I remember,
and yet somehow he did.
Yeah. You're so funny. But anyways, but you
teed that one right up.
Right, that was I definitely set you up to kill me. But I mean, 4 years ago when the Steelers played the Saints, it might have been 8 years ago now, but I remember Timmons hit Drew Brees while he was just after he was throwing the ball, and he got a penalty for it. And Mike Tomlin was furious, and he brought up the fact that we teach our players to hit with their heads up. And as you saw, he did not lead with his helmet. He led with his shoulders, and naturally your head is attached to your shoulders. So, yes, the front of his face mask did contact Drew Brees, but the crown of his helmet did not make contact with him because his head was up. I think the Steelers will continue to teach what they're supposed to be teaching and keeping their heads up. The real question, like you said, is how is this going to be officiated? Are these incidental moments where a receiver jumps really high in the air and you're targeting their body, and all of a sudden they're above you, and they're coming down, and now your helmets happen to contact each other? Those are the things that I don't think you can really legislate out of the game.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult, and I did see a post from the NFL where their head of officiating or somebody vice president of something or other of harumphing, said that
I can get a rump out of that guy.
Yes, the penalty was probably it would have only been called maybe 3 times last year, so it's not going to be something that's going to be over officiously. It's not going to be over officiated in the
stop the game.
It's not going to change the fundamentals of the game. What it does do is it makes guys more aware of it, which is what you want to do. And the other thing it does is it takes situations like you saw in the Green Bay. I'm trying to think Green Bay Minnesota game last year. Where you had a linebacker come in and hit Devontae Adams while he was being held up.
I forgot about that hit.
Yeah, that was one that would have been flagged in this situation. Now they can go back and look at that and decide immediately, do they want to eject the player or not eject the player? And so there's a little bit there in terms of that. So that's where this is going to go in terms of increasing player safety.
But of course, it's gonna be very subjective, because you're gonna have some crews that look back at it and they see, there's those moments where it's obvious that should be an ejectable play, and then there's other ones that you're gonna think like that's a football play. That runner was free and was still busting loose on people, and this guy had to put him down, and their helmet's happening. Oh, you know what? That guy's gone, because I think that's too egregious. It'll be interesting to see that happen.
I don't think they're going to be ejecting guys left and right. I think they'll be very judicious in how they do that. Teams are playing with 45-man rosters on game days, and I think the NFL, the league, is very attuned to that. Because, of course, they put the limits on the teams. And so if you start throwing star players out of games for things like that on a regular basis, the fan base is going to go nuts. The teams are going to go nuts because if you lose a game because all of a sudden your star running back, Luke Kuechly's out, or your running back lowers his head and you're calling it in those situations, teams are going to fight back against this very adamantly.
And the last thing NFL needs is more squabbling between teams.
Absolutely. So that's going to do it for today's Miller Lite Q&A podcast. I'm Dale Lolley for Chris Carter. We'll see you soon.